I'm picking up from what we did last week on bullshit. If you remember, when we talked about signified and the signifier, we were saying that it's possible, and this is what happens. People split the signifier from the signified so that they can insert a different signified, but they don't tell people that this is what I am doing. They make people play along and think that whatever I'm saying is what you're hearing, but that is not the case. And that's what bullshit is about. So with bullshit, it's when, for example, if you're marketing something, you can tell people, tunajivunia kuwa wa Kenya, but you attach it to a product. So basically, the bullshit is that you're making it sound like your concern is for Kenya when your real concern is for people to buy that product. So advertising, marketing, political campaigns, they do a lot of this, and even the workplace, they do a lot of this bullshit where you say something, a person says something, and wants people to hear one thing, but actually propel them to do the opposite, something different from what they think they're hearing. So how is it that we are so easily manipulated? Not easily, actually. How is it that people succeed in manipulating us like that? And today I want to talk about emotion. What happens is that people speak to when they speak a message, they inspire a certain emotion, and that emotion that it inspires in us drives us to do whatever they want, even if what they want is not what they said they want. So for example, if we are still using the case of the product, this person is trying to create feelings of loyalty in the audience of Tunajivunia. He's trying to create feelings of loyalty so that with those feelings, the public is now driven to go and buy a certain product. And basically what I'm saying is that bullshit is a manipulation of the emotion. And so we need to look at what are emotions and why are they important? And especially in an institutional culture where people say that emotions are invalid. So it's so interesting that we live in a culture where people say your emotions are invalid, what matters is facts. But then when they want to spur you to action, they use the same emotions. They exploit your emotions. So what are emotions? Emotions are not just feelings. Emotions are nerves. They're like the nerves on your finger. You know, the biological nerves. If you put your hand next to something that's hot, your nerves indicate through the pain you feel and the message that your nerve sends from your fingers to your brain, it indicates that something is wrong at the point of your hand, and you remove it. And that of course that messaging goes on in microseconds. So if I touch something hot now, I'll almost feel it within less than a second. I'll already have removed my hand if my nerves are working. So that's the way emotions are. Emotions are not just feelings for useless feelings, actually. What emotions do is that they are the nerve endings of our mind. It is through emotions that we are able to tell that something is nice or something is bad. And many times, even before we know what exactly it is. So if you go back to the example I've given of putting your hand on something hot, all right, that's what emotions do. They make you sense mentally that something is wrong or something is right and nice and pleasurable. And then that's the, and sorry, what I wanted to say is sometimes, you may not know exactly what is burning your hand, but you remove the hand first to prevent any more pain or injury, and then you look at what is the problem. That's the same thing that emotions are supposed to help us with. They're supposed to help us detect that something is wrong, but then get out of that situation quickly and examine what could be the problem. So emotions are a very important part of our lives. But we live in a system that has told us that how we feel does not matter. We are being sentimental. We are not being objective, quote unquote. So we live in a culture that tells us that emotions are wrong, and that we need to be objective and cold and factual and all that. But even though that's what we are being told consciously, when you look at the things that are done, at how we are manipulated using the emotions. And actually that was what Cambridge Analytica was doing in Kenya in 2017.
In the battle for power, democracy has a new front line. Elections around the world are being fought less and less on doorsteps and hustings.
Never shall we lose our faith and courage, and never shall we fail in exertion and resolve.
And more on screens and social media. It's an online information war where often unseen hands harvest your personal data, tapping into your hopes and fears for the greatest political yield. And one British company is at the very heart of it. They've worked under the radar in elections in Nigeria, Kenya, the Czech Republic, India and Argentina. But they are best known for their work in America.
There can be no prosperity without law and order.
That company is Cambridge Analytica.
Is that immediately recording?
Yeah.
After a 4-month undercover investigation, tonight a glimpse into how they really operate. Another meeting was arranged, and this time, a fortnight later at a different London hotel, we get from Cambridge Analytica a memorable lesson in modern electoral tactics.
The two fundamental human drivers when it comes to taking information on board effectively are hopes and fears, and many of those are unspoken and even unconscious. You didn't know that was a fear until you saw something that just evoked that reaction from you.
Right.
And our job is to drop the bucket further down the well than anybody else, to understand what are those really deep-seated underlying fears, concerns. There's no good fighting an election campaign on the facts, because actually it's all about emotion.
And in one of their recent overseas campaigns, there was no shortage of emotion.
There's no good fighting an election campaign on the facts, because actually it's all about emotion. The big mistake political parties make is that they attempt to win the argument rather than locating the emotional center of the issue or the concern and speaking directly to that.
What Cambridge Analytica did was to dig deep into the deepest fears of Kenyans and keep talking about it in social media and in public space, so that every time political messages were coming to Kenyans, there's a certain amount of emotion that those messages elicit, and then people were now voting on the basis of those emotions rather than on what the candidates were saying. We live in a culture where power is manipulating our emotions, and especially through language and pictures. And then they're doing that so that we can take a certain action, which they want, but which they know it would be very hard to get us to do if they told us outright. Remember those two things, that one emotions are important nerves. They are nerves that are able to detect that something is amiss. But what happens with power is that before you can ask, what is happening with my emotions, they've already given you an action that you should take. And then you do that action without thinking. And this is what is driving the right-wing, the right-wing hatred and political hatred that we are continuing to see growing in the Western Hemisphere. So today I want to talk about fallacies and emotions, basically. But first, before we get to fallacies, I want to talk about what are the emotions that are usually used in the public space. That, and please think of any others. I just thought of 5, but you can pick others. What are the emotions that are used in the public sphere when we are being told certain messages about certain things which that people want us to accept? And one of them, I think the most important, is the goodwill. A lot of times we approach conversations. Remember I said, was it 2 weeks ago, that in every conversation there's an assumption of goodwill. There's an assumption that the people who are discussing are there to discuss what they are saying, and they are not there for other things. So, and then also that goodwill, the assumption of that goodwill is that we think we are in an equal engagement, meaning that both of us, not both, but all of us who come to the conversation have the same, are equals. Okay, there's no inequality in terms of power and relationship between the people who are in the conversation. So that goodwill is an emotion that is always exploited by people who, anytime you start to doubt or to ask questions about who are the people engaged in this conversation, you get attacked for noticing that there's an inequality somewhere. So these emotions of goodwill are always being exploited so as to get us to do stuff. And the people who come to tell us about those things, they come to us like, you and I are the same. You know, like, for example, when the president says, I forgive you, and I'm asking you to forgive me just as much as I forgive you. When somebody says that, and it's very flattering to Kenyans, the assumption is that we are in an equal relationship, that we're not talking about a president and a citizen, a president who is commander-in-chief, who has powers to decide policy and money and everything. People forget that part and think that we are equals. And in fact, that's what he says. I forgive you just as, I ask you to forgive me just as I forgive you. If you have wronged me, even me, I forgive you for wronging me, as if we are equals. And the purpose of that is to generate goodwill. It's to generate goodwill so that people now say, oh, the president is so humble, he's just a man like all of us. And then that way, we are able to ignore a lot of the things that he does. And by the way, this is not about the man himself. I'm just saying, giving it as an example. So there's one of the emotions that is exploited is that goodwill. The goodwill that we are in an equal, that all the people participating in a conversation are equals. Even though if you really ask them point blank, then of course they would say, no, I have to accept whatever he says. He's my boss, he's my president, he's my, you know. So that's one emotion that is exploited, goodwill. The other one is the emotion of the need to belong. So what these public messages do is to always appeal to our need to belong, and especially to feel African. Because of the way we have been battered by colonialism and imperialism, appealing to people's need for identity and authentic African identity always works. And that's what the political class uses. Anytime they want to sell something that might not be sellable, they appeal to ethnicity, because ethnicity, people respond to it. And we need to be very distinct, since we are students and scholars. We need to be more specific than the general public about some of these things. The fact that people respond as ethnic groups doesn't mean necessarily that they are tribalists. Sometimes they're doing it to belong, because they feel that ethnicity is the only guaranteed identity in Kenya. And it's not a mistake. It's the only guaranteed identity in Kenya, where people will not dispute it. And so when that is appealed to, people feel, at least I belong to something. At least this is something where I'll be heard. Is that necessarily the case? I don't think so. But that's what is being appealed to. It's being appealed, what people are appealing to is the need to belong. That emotional need to belong. And that explains the mess of our politics. And in fact, it also says, the point also is, you cannot fight it by telling people to stop being tribal, which is the stupidity we always say in the media. The way to fight that instinct to do things because somebody has appealed to an ethnic group and you want to belong is to give people other things that make them feel they belong. People need to feel fulfilled. They need to feel they're part of something. That's what is being exploited. It's not even ethnicity. It's that need to belong to something, to be part of something greater. That's what is being appealed to. And because we don't have any other forms of feeling that we belong, we are only allowed ethnicity, then that's why ethnicity becomes the vehicle for political messaging, and turn a bad political messaging. But I'll develop that a little later. The other emotion that is exploited is the desire to be a good person. You know, normally we want to feel that we are decent people, that if somebody is in distress, we will help them, that if somebody is feeling sad or feeling low, that we will empathize with them, that if somebody is happy, we celebrate with them. We want to feel like we are decent human beings who are nice to each other. And many times, if you look in public discourse, you will see people exploiting that feeling of morality and goodwill. So like one thing that is told, like this is told to me and it really irritates me. People tell me things like, instead of disagreeing with what I've said, they say, I didn't expect that of you as so-and-so. So basically the idea is to appeal to my sense of my ego and my sense of decency. So that now, instead of dealing with what the issue is, I start now responding to that emotion, saying, oh, you know, just see, I'm not that kind of person. This is what I meant. Don't make a mistake. No, don't mistake me for something else. I didn't mean it that way. This is what I meant. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. It's a way of manipulating somebody so that they start going into the defense of who they are instead of pursuing the idea that brought them to the conversation. Another emotion is the desire to not get in trouble with authority. So people, when people are in a conversation and they want to blackmail the other people, they say things like, oh, that would be illegal, or oh, a certain authority will be upset if you say that or if you do that. And the point is to manipulate our sense of wanting to do the right thing by whatever authority there is and accept whatever the person is saying. So let's see. So there's the threat, the appeal to authority, so that we blackmail people to want to conform to authority, and people can cite names, or they can use the state organs, like saying the police will come for you. And another emotion is pity. This one is used so much, and it's so annoying, especially by the media. The media always appeals to our pity, even when we should be angry. By the way, those are two different emotions. Pity, the focus is on, pity is a feeling that leads to focus on the self and on my goodness. Oh, how nice I am pitying someone. I still have some feelings for someone. So if you're given the story of, for example, there was a story in the media of inequality in the education system. And then you see these children, they are going to school in classrooms that are almost falling apart. And then the emotion that is drawn out of such a report is pity. People start saying, oh yes, and it ends there, because we feel good about ourselves pitying the poor and what. But anger is a different emotion. Anger starts saying, so what do we do about it? What do we do to rectify this situation? And normally, what happens a lot in the Kenyan public is a manipulation of pity and sadness through melodrama, through presenting the victims, but never showing us they are victimizers. Because the victimizers are the ones who would spur us to anger and start saying, what are you guys doing? But when it's pity, we all just say, oh, how sad, oh yeah, can we contribute to make things a little better? But we don't address the injustice that leads to this situation where people are in a difficult position. So what happens in Kenya, and this is something I want you to, as you analyze that video I'm going to send you, I hope you will be able to mention some of the emotions that are elicited by some of the things that the gentlemen say, because there's a lot of that in that video, appealing to a sense of morality, appealing to a sense of authority, and expecting the other person to respond in that way and avoid the issue. It's a very effective tactic of conversation. And the point, especially in this Kenya, is to prevent conversations about uncomfortable topics which are uncomfortable for the ruling class. People say, don't you see anything positive? We'll come to that positive BS. Yeah, don't you see anything positive? Why don't you look at, So it's an appeal to morality, to the feeling that I am a good person. And because I'm a good person, anything good that people do appeals to me. It's so effective in preventing political conversations. So effective, it's annoying. But we'll come to why it is like that. So before I come to actually fallacies, what I wanted to say is that for us now that we are educators and we are so clever and we went to school, for us, our job is to name those emotions. And that's why I'm saying, I hope you will be able to name them when you're analyzing the conversation that I'm going to send to you. Our job is to name how we feel about certain things. Yeah, because by naming, then we are able to explain to people why a certain action is sending us in a certain direction instead of another direction. And I think this is one of the greatest weaknesses that we have. We are not able to name what certain things make us feel, because we've been told that emotions are opposite of reason. We can't be objective when we are emotional. But the point of naming emotions is not to be driven by emotions. Emotions are our sensors. Just like if you have sensors for security, you can't still rely on the sensor to fight a robber who is coming, you still have to pick up the arms or whatever you're going to do to fight. But it's important that you have that sensor that something is off. And that is what we have to start naming for Kenyans. We have to start naming what they are feeling about certain things, which is driving them to act in a certain way. So you remember, was it 2 weeks ago when we were talking about the Waiguru, her rhetorical strategies? We said, I listened to her and I feel, I believe her, but something is off. And that's an emotion which you must name and then explain, why do you feel off? Why does it still, even though she sounds credible, why doesn't it make sense to you? And I think our ability to name these emotions will go a long way in removing some of the hostility that leads us to fight every 5 years. Because politicians are manipulating our emotions and we never discuss them. We just say, oh, politicians, these politicians, but we never say, how does it make us feel when somebody says that? What does it spur me to do? What does it make me think I should do? And is that the feeling they want from us? To be able to name those emotions, I think, is one of the steps to get us out of this 5-year election violence cycle. And because, these politicians are manipulating us emotionally, especially when they talk about peace. When they talk about peace, we are not hearing peace. We get scared because basically peace has become a word that's alerting us of the possibility of violence. And we need to name these things. We need to name them so that the people who are manipulating us so that we can shame the people who are manipulating us. And Cambridge Analytica, that's what they did. They came and found out what are the things that worry Kenyans the most. And then they went ahead and dipped into those emotions and put out ads, some very bad ads, so that the ads were very disturbing to the mind, whichever side of the political divide you are on. That's what they do. And so we need to be more, we are the people who are going to push for more discussion of how we feel about certain things. Because when we don't name emotions, it means that the political class has a well. In fact, Cambridge Analytica called it a well, where you just dip into and pull out water. So that's what the politicians do. They just sink their buckets, remove our emotions and just spill them and make us do very crazy things because we are not naming them. We have to name them, let it come out. And we say when they tell us this is how we feel. But this feeling is not going to make us do A, B, C, D.
Now on the issue of Cambridge Analytica, straight after Channel 4 showed that documentary or investigative piece, and there was a lot of reaction, but the Kenyan media did not have the courage to do their own investigative story. Did we know what was happening? That is the question that a lot of people are asking. And if we didn't know, why didn't we know? We have all the facilities, we have data collection, we have the personnel. We could have read into it, but we never read into it. I'd like to read some reactions here, and I begin with some reaction from Nyabola Nanjala. She wrote for Al Jazeera, and these are some of the things she said. First, she said, in 2017, Privacy International claimed that the ruling Jubilee Party spent around $6 million, that's an equivalent of 600 million Kenyan shillings, to contract Cambridge Analytica, while the opposition retained Aristotle for its own analytics operations. Secondly, she says that She quotes the video actually secretly shot by Channel 4, and Mark Turnbull, the managing director of Cambridge Analytica, says the Jubilee Party, quote, they rebranded the entire party twice, written their manifesto, done 2 rounds of about 50,000 surveys, and that's the reason why even when the campaign teams try to deny this, it's difficult to accept that denial. And Nanjala goes further to say that in one of her conclusions that the Channel 4's undercover investigation affirms that Kenya is Cambridge Analytica's biggest success story, the one they used to lure in politicians who want a shortcut to power, and Cambridge twice built Kenya's ruling party in London's boardroom, boardroom on the back of a legal and moral vacuum, and they are proud of it, as was showcased in that secret video. And finally, she says in her ultimate conclusion that the rhetoric around the 2017 election in Kenya has damaged lives and livelihoods. Fear of ethnic violence was so high that certain neighborhoods were emptied out. Personal relationships have been irreparably damaged. None of this is illegal per se, but it's deeply immoral, and this needs to count for something. That's a piece that was written for Al Jazeera by Nyabola Nanjala, who is a political analyst. And I'd like to quote one from Dr. Wandia, who is here with us in studio today. In one of her recent writing on this issue titled Media and Academia, Cambridge Analytica's Strange Bedfellows, Dr. Njoya concludes that it does not matter how many Kenyans Cambridge Analytica influence. Even one Kenya is one Kenyan too many. What matters is that it appealed to Kenya's worst fears, essentially hoping to whip up hysteria just so that the president could win a vote. And that's where we begin. And I begin with you. A reaction from your own writing. What informed this kind of writing?
First of all, being a target of bots myself, it was very dehumanizing to be trying to talk about healthcare and education and why they matter for elections. And then you get all these insults. And usually when the insults are targeted at women, they are also sexist. So I did a lot of blocking, but it's still very dehumanizing to go through that kind of thing. And I can imagine how much worse it was for others. So even when we started talking about Cambridge Analytica in August, it was also humiliating to know that there are some foreigners being paid by our own Kenyans to do this to us, to dehumanize us in such a way. So that was part of what informed my post, because I felt it was degrading, honestly. And what is so disturbing about Cambridge Analytica's tactics is that they are dehumanizing to the people, and that's why we find it very hard to discuss the issues. There was also, I don't know whether it's them who did it, but there was also a Facebook page that started posting my posts on Facebook and putting some crazy pictures of people from elsewhere. So you feel violated in a way, because you're approaching cyberspace as a citizen. You want to comment on issues, and the tactic of Cambridge Analytica and like-minded people is to polarize the debate so much to remove the middle ground where you discuss the issues and leave people talking about their identities and ethnicities.